Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he guided his cargo ship into the docking bay. The trading station looked the same as always, a massive wheel spinning slowly in the darkness of space. He had been coming here for 3 years now, ever since he left his old life behind and became a freelance trader. The pay was decent, and he got to see different worlds. That was enough for him. The docking clamps locked onto his ship with a loud clang. Jake grabbed his jacket and headed down the ramp. The station's main corridor was busy as usual. Aliens of every shape and size walked past him. Some had fur, others had scales, and a few looked like they were made of living crystal. Jake had stopped being amazed by alien species a long time ago. He made his way to the trading center to collect his payment for the supply run. The station master, a short alien with 4 arms, counted out the credits and transferred them to Jake's account. It had been a good run. Maybe he would treat himself to a real meal instead of the freeze-dried stuff on his ship. The station's restaurant was on the upper level. It had a large window that looked out into space. Jake found a table in the corner and ordered something that looked like chicken, but probably wasn't. As he waited for his food, he noticed someone watching him from across the room. She was tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to shimmer like silver in the light. Her eyes were large and dark, and she moved with a grace that made her seem like she was floating. Jake recognized her species immediately. She was a Velen. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Velens. They were scholars and diplomats. Famous for being peaceful and wise, they hadn't fought a war in thousands of years. The Velen woman smiled and walked over to his table. "Excuse me," she said in perfect English. "You are human, yes?" Jake nodded. "That's right. Name's Jake Morrison." "I am Zira," she said. "May I sit with you? I find humans fascinating, and I rarely get the chance to speak with one." Jake shrugged and gestured to the empty chair. "Sure, have a seat." Zira sat down gracefully. Her movements were so smooth that Jake felt clumsy just watching her. She leaned forward with interest. "Tell me about Earth. I have read much about your world, but I would love to hear about it from someone who has lived there." Jake wasn't used to aliens being so interested in him. Most species in the galaxy thought humans were nothing special. They weren't the strongest or the smartest. They didn't have any special abilities. They were just average in almost every way. But Zira seemed genuinely curious. Jake found himself talking about Earth, about the cities he had grown up in, about the forests and oceans. He told her about human history and culture. Zira listened to every word, asking questions and making thoughtful comments. His food arrived, but Jake barely noticed. He was too busy talking. Zira asked about human conflicts, about the wars Earth had fought. She seemed particularly interested in how humans dealt with danger and hardship. "Your species is remarkable," Zira said after a while. "You have survived so much. Your world sounds harsh compared to most planets in the galaxy." Jake had never thought about it that way. "I guess Earth can be tough sometimes." "But it's home, you know." Zira smiled warmly. "I understand completely, which is why I would like to extend an invitation. I live on Velos Prime, just a short jump from this station. Would you join me for dinner at my home? I would love to continue our conversation and share some Velen culture with you." Jake hesitated. He didn't usually accept invitations from strangers, even friendly ones. But Zira seemed harmless. The Velens were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful and kind. What could go wrong? "That's really nice of you," Jake said, "but I don't want to impose." "Not at all," Zira insisted. "It would be my honor to host you. I so rarely get to entertain guests from other worlds. Please say yes." There was something earnest in her expression that made Jake want to agree. Plus, he had nothing else planned. His next cargo run wasn't scheduled for another 3 days. "All right," Jake said. "I'd be happy to come." Zira's face lit up with pleasure. "Wonderful. Shall we say tomorrow evening? I will send you the coordinates for my home." They exchanged contact information, and Zira left the restaurant with the same floating grace she had arrived with. Jake finished his meal feeling pleased with himself. It wasn't every day that someone wanted to learn about human culture. Later that evening, Jake met his friend Ryan Carter at one of the station's bars. Ryan was another human trader, a few years older than Jake, with gray streaks in his hair and a suspicious nature. "You did what?" Ryan asked when Jake told him about the invitation. "I'm having dinner with a Velen woman tomorrow," Jake repeated. "Her name is Zira. She's interested in human culture." Ryan shook his head. "Man, you don't even know this person. You don't know anything about Velen customs or what this invitation really means." "It's just dinner," Jake said. "The Velens are peaceful. They're like the nicest species in the galaxy." "That you know of," Ryan said. "Look, I'm not saying she's dangerous or anything. I'm just saying you should be careful. We don't know as much about alien cultures as we think we do." Jake laughed. "You worry too much. What's the worst that could happen? She serves me food I don't like?" Ryan didn't look convinced, but he dropped the subject. They spent the rest of the evening talking about cargo routes and prices. But in the back of Jake's mind, a small voice wondered if Ryan might be right. Maybe he should be more careful. But when Jake returned to his ship that night, he pushed those doubts aside. Zira had seemed so kind and genuine. The Velens had a reputation for being trustworthy. He was probably just being paranoid. Jake fell asleep, thinking about the dinner tomorrow. He was actually looking forward to it. It would be nice to have a real conversation with someone for once, instead of just haggling over cargo prices. He had no idea that accepting Zira's invitation would be the biggest mistake of his life. Jake's small ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Velos Prime. The planet was beautiful, covered in blue oceans and green continents. 3 small moons orbited around it. Jake followed the coordinates Zira had sent him, bringing his ship down through the atmosphere. Her home was located in a quiet area outside the main city. As Jake approached, he saw that the house was unlike anything he had seen before. It was made of some kind of crystal material that caught the light and split it into rainbows. The structure seemed to grow out of the ground naturally, like a plant made of glass. Jake landed his ship in the clearing next to the house. Zira was waiting for him at the entrance. She wore flowing robes that matched the silvery color of her skin. "Jake, welcome," she said with a bright smile. "I am so glad you came." "This place is amazing," Jake said, looking up at the crystalline walls. "I've never seen architecture like this." "Thank you," Zira said. "Velen buildings are grown rather than built. We shaped them over many years using sound frequencies. Please come inside." The interior of the house was just as stunning as the outside. The walls seemed to glow with a soft light. Strange plants grew in pots throughout the rooms. Art pieces that looked like frozen music hung on the walls. Everything was elegant and peaceful. Zira led Jake through a hallway to a large dining room. A table was already set with dishes and glasses that looked like they were made from colored water. The smell of food filled the air, strange but not unpleasant. "Please, sit," Zira said, gesturing to one of the chairs. Jake sat down, feeling a bit awkward. The chair adjusted itself to fit his body perfectly. The table was covered with different foods, none of which Jake recognized. There were blue fruits, purple vegetables, and something that looked like bread, but sparkled. "I hope the food is suitable for human biology," Zira said, as she sat across from him. "I researched your species' dietary needs carefully." "I'm sure it will be fine," Jake said. He picked up something that looked like a small cake and took a bite. It tasted sweet and tangy at the same time. As they ate, Zira asked more questions about Earth. But these questions were different from yesterday. She wanted to know specific things about human history. She asked about wars, about how humans trained soldiers, about survival techniques. "You seem really interested in human conflicts," Jake said, starting to feel a bit uncomfortable. Forgive me, Zira said quickly. It is just so different from Velen history. We have been peaceful for so long that violence is almost impossible for us to understand. Your species has overcome so much adversity. It is admirable. Jake relaxed a little. That made sense. To a species that had never known war, human history probably seemed fascinating in an academic way. Tell me, Zira continued, is it true that humans can survive injuries that would kill most other species? I don't know about that, Jake said. We're pretty fragile compared to a lot of aliens. I mean, I've met species with armored skin and redundant organs. Humans are just regular flesh and blood. Zira tilted her head. But you are more durable than you appear, yes? I have read that humans have remarkable endurance and pain tolerance. Maybe, Jake admitted. We're pretty good at pushing through tough situations. It's just how we evolved, I guess. As they talked, Jake started noticing things about the house that seemed odd. The doors were much heavier than they needed to be, with locks that looked more like security systems. Through an archway, he could see what looked like surveillance equipment on a shelf, and there was a stairway leading down to a lower level that had a reinforced door. You have a basement? Jake asked. Zira's smile didn't change. Yes, for storage. Velos Prime has storms sometimes, and we keep supplies underground. Just a precaution. That made sense, but something about the way she said it felt wrong. Jake tried to access his communication device under the table, wanting to send a quick message to Ryan. But the device showed no signal. That was strange. It should have been able to connect to his ship at this distance. Is something wrong? Zira asked, watching him carefully. No, just checking the time, Jake lied. I should probably head back to the station soon. So soon? Zira looked disappointed. But we have not finished dinner, and I was hoping you would stay the night. It is traditional for Velen hosts to offer lodging to their guests. That's really kind, Jake said, but I should get back to my ship. I insist, Zira said. Her voice was still friendly, but there was something firm underneath it. The guest room is already prepared. It would be rude to refuse. Jake heard something click. He looked around and realized that the doors to the dining room had locked. He could see the bolts sliding into place. Zira, what's going on? Jake asked, his hand moving toward the small knife he kept on his belt. Nothing to worry about, Zira said, standing up. Her graceful movements suddenly seemed more calculated than elegant. I simply want to make sure you are comfortable. For privacy, you understand. Privacy from what? Jake stood up too, his instincts screaming at him that something was very wrong. Zira walked to a panel on the wall and pressed something. The lights in the house shifted from soft white to a dim red. You see, Jake, I have not been entirely honest with you. I am a scholar, that much is true, but I study more than just culture. What do you study? Jake asked, slowly backing toward the door. Potential, Zira said. The potential of different species, their value in various markets. Jake's blood ran cold. Markets? The galaxy is not as peaceful as you think, Zira said. There are places where strength and survival skills are valuable, very valuable. And humans, despite being so average in most ways, have a reputation for being surprisingly resilient. Jake pulled out his knife. You're going to let me leave, Zira? She laughed softly. With what? A small blade? I have reinforced doors, security systems, and help on the way. You are in my home, Jake Morrison, and my home is very secure. Jake heard footsteps from somewhere below. Heavy footsteps. More than one set. Whatever was in that basement was coming up. I thought the alien woman was harmless, Jake muttered to himself. I'm an idiot. Zira smiled, showing teeth that were sharper than they had appeared before. Do not feel bad. Everyone underestimates everyone else. That is how the galaxy works. I thought capturing a relaxed human would be easy. Perhaps I am the idiot too. We shall see. The door to the basement opened, and two massive aliens stepped into the hallway. They were built like tanks, with gray skin like stone and arms as thick as tree trunks. Jake recognized them as crone, a warrior species known for their strength. Jake looked at the knife in his hand, then at the two crone, then at Zira's confident smile. He was trapped in a house made of crystal, with no weapons and no way to call for help. This was going to be bad. The two Kron enforcers moved into the room slowly, blocking any path to the exit. They were each at least 7 feet tall and built like walking mountains. Their stone-like skin probably meant that Jake's little knife would do about as much damage as throwing a pebble at a tank. "There is no need for violence," Zira said calmly. "If you cooperate, this will be much easier for everyone." Jake's mind raced. The dining room had no windows. The doors were locked and reinforced. The only furniture was the table and chairs, neither of which would be useful as weapons against the Kron. He was trapped. "What exactly do you want from me?" Jake asked, trying to buy time. "I already told you," Zira said. "You have value. Humans are becoming quite popular in certain circles. Your endurance, your ability to think under pressure, your surprising toughness. There are people who will pay well for a healthy human specimen." "Specimen?" Jake felt sick. "You're talking about slavery." "Such an ugly word," Zira said. "Think of it as employment opportunity. You will fight in controlled environments for entertainment. If you survive and perform well, you could even earn your freedom eventually." "Fighting rings," Jake said. "You're selling people to illegal fighting rings." Zira shrugged elegantly. "The galaxy has many forms of entertainment. Some are more accepted than others, but the credits spend the same either way." One of the Kron took a step forward. Jake noticed the alien moved slowly, deliberately. They were strong, but speed was not their advantage. That was something. "I would prefer not to damage you," Zira continued. "Your value decreases if you are injured, so I will give you a choice. You can take the sedative I offer, sleep peacefully, and wake up in a comfortable holding cell, or my associates here can force the issue, which will be unpleasant for all of us." Jake looked at the Kron again. They weren't carrying weapons that he could see. They didn't need weapons. Their fists alone could probably punch through a wall, but they were confident, almost lazy in their movements. They expected this to be easy. "Everyone always underestimated everyone else," Zira had said. Maybe she was right. "Can I ask you something first?" Jake said. Zira nodded graciously. "Of course. I am not cruel. You're Velen. Your whole species is supposed to be peaceful. How did you end up doing this?" For a moment, something dark crossed Zira's face. "Peace makes you soft, Jake. My people have been scholars and diplomats for so long that we forgot what the galaxy really is. We forgot that out here, in the spaces between the laws, power and credits are all that matter. I simply chose to remember what my ancestors knew. That survival requires more than kind words." "So you prey on other species instead," Jake said. "I provide a service," Zira corrected, "and I am very good at it. Do you know how many species I have sold? Dozens. Your friend Ryan Carter warned you to be careful. You should have listened to him." Jake's blood went cold. "You know Ryan?" "I know of him," Zira said. "I researched you before extending my invitation. I always do. Single human, no close family ties, works alone. Perfect." That was when Jake made his decision. If he was going to die, he wasn't going to make it easy. And if he was lucky, maybe he could find a way out of this. "All right," Jake said, lowering his knife. "I'll take the sedative." "You're right. No point in making this harder than it needs to be." Zira smiled, pleased. "A wise choice." She gestured to one of the Kron, who pulled out a small injector from his belt. The Kron walked toward Jake slowly. Too slowly. They really did think this was going to be simple. The alien reached out with the injector. Jake moved fast. He grabbed the Kron's arm and twisted, using the alien's own momentum against him. The technique was something he had learned a long time ago, in a life before trading cargo. The Kron was strong, but strength didn't help if you didn't see the attack coming. The injector fell to the floor. Jake kicked it away and drove his knife into the space where the Kron's thick arm met his shoulder. He wasn't trying to kill the alien, just hurt him enough to create chaos. The Kron roared in pain and anger. His partner rushed forward. Zira shouted something in her own language. Jake dove under the dining table and kicked it up with both legs. The crystalline table was heavier than it looked, but his adrenaline gave him strength. It crashed into the second Kron, buying Jake a few precious seconds. He ran for the hallway, looking for any way out. The front door was locked tight. The windows were made of the same crystal material as the walls and looked thick enough to stop a missile. But the door to the basement was still open. Jake heard the Kron crashing through the dining room behind him. He didn't have time to think. He ran down the stairs into the basement, hoping to find another exit, or at least somewhere to hide. What he found was much worse. The basement was large, much larger than the upper floor. Most of it was open space with a dirt floor, but along one wall were cages, small holding cells made of metal bars, and in those cells were people, not humans, but other aliens. They looked at Jake with fear and hope mixed together in their eyes. In the center of the basement was a circular area marked out with painted lines, an arena. This wasn't just a holding facility. Zira made her captives fight each other here, probably to test them before selling them. "Oh no," Jake whispered. One of the prisoners, a young human man with a black eye and torn clothes, pressed against the bars of his cage. "You have to get out of here," he said urgently. "She's going to lock you up. She's going to make you fight." "How long have you been here?" Jake asked. 3 weeks, the man said. "My name is Ben Parker. I'm a pilot. She grabbed me from the station just like you." Jake heard the heavy footsteps of the Kron on the stairs. There was no time. He looked around desperately for something, anything he could use. His eyes landed on a tool bench against one wall. There were maintenance tools for the cages, some electrical equipment, cleaning chemicals. "Ben," Jake said quickly, "is there any way out of here besides those stairs?" "There's a service tunnel," Ben said, pointing to a small door half hidden behind storage containers. "But it's locked. She has the only key." The Kron appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Behind them came Zira, her elegant face now twisted with anger. "You are making this very difficult," she said coldly. "And you have damaged my property." She gestured to the Kron with the injured shoulder. Jake grabbed a wrench from the tool bench. It wasn't much, but it was better than a knife against these aliens. "Here's the thing about humans," Jake said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "We don't give up, ever. It's kind of our whole thing." Zira laughed. "Brave words, but you are one human with a wrench, facing 2 Kron warriors in a locked basement. What exactly do you think is going to happen here?" Jake looked at the arena, at the cages, at the tools and chemicals on the bench. He looked at the Kron, slow and strong but overconfident. He looked at Zira, elegant and intelligent but soft, from a life of peace. Then he smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "I guess we're about to find out." The first Kron charged at Jake like a bull. The alien was fast for his size, but Jake had faced bigger problems before. Years ago, before he became a trader, Jake had been a Marine. He had trained for combat in a dozen different environments. The skills were still there, buried under years of cargo runs and quiet living. Jake waited until the last second, then dropped and rolled to the side. The Kron crashed into the tool bench where Jake had been standing. Tools and equipment scattered across the floor. The second Kron, the one with the injured shoulder, moved more carefully. He was trying to cut off Jake's escape routes. Smart, but slow. Jake grabbed a bottle of cleaning fluid from the scattered supplies. He read the warning label in half a second. Corrosive, flammable, perfect. "You cannot win this," Zira called from the stairs. She was staying back, letting her enforcers do the work. "Surrender now, and I will forget about your resistance." Jake didn't bother answering. He threw the wrench at the nearest Kron. The alien blocked it easily with his arm, exactly as Jake expected. While the Kron was distracted, Jake sprayed the cleaning fluid at his face. The Kron screamed and stumbled backward, clawing at his eyes. The chemical might not hurt his stone-like skin, but his eyes were vulnerable. Jake felt a twinge of guilt, but this was survival. The other Kron roared with anger and came at Jake from the side. This time there was no fancy dodge. The alien's fist connected with Jake's ribs and sent him flying into the wall of cages. Pain exploded through his chest. At least one rib was cracked. "Jake!" Ben shouted from his cage. Jake forced himself to his feet. His vision swam. The Kron was coming again. Jake's hand found one of the electrical cables from the scattered equipment. It was connected to a power source for the cage locks. Not much voltage, but maybe enough. As the Kron reached for him, Jake jammed the exposed wire against the alien's arm. The electrical current made the Kron's muscles seize up. He fell to one knee, his body jerking. Jake stumbled away, holding his injured ribs. 2 down, temporarily. But Zira was already activating something on her wrist device. An alarm began to sound. "You are very resourceful," Zira said, her voice cold now. "But I have more help coming. And you are injured. This is over." Jake looked at the cages, at the frightened faces of the prisoners. He looked at the locked tunnel door. He looked at the arena where Zira had forced people to fight for her profit. "You said humans are valuable because we don't give up," Jake said, breathing hard. "You were right about that, but you forgot something." "What?" Zira asked. "We're also really good at breaking things." Jake grabbed another bottle of cleaning fluid and threw it at the crystalline ceiling. The bottle shattered, spraying the chemical across the smooth surface. Then he picked up a piece of metal from the tool bench and threw it hard at the same spot. The crystal cracked. Not much, but enough. The structure of the ceiling was compromised. Velen buildings were beautiful and strong, but they were grown, not built. They were organic, and organic things had weaknesses. Jake hit the crack again and again with anything he could find. The sound of breaking crystal filled the basement like shattering glass. Zira's eyes went wide with horror. "Stop!" she screamed. "You will bring the whole house down." "That's the idea," Jake said. The ceiling groaned. Pieces of crystal began to fall. The Kron with the burned eyes stumbled toward the stairs, trying to escape. The other one was still jerking from the electrical shock. Zira ran up the stairs, her graceful composure completely gone. Jake heard her shouting commands in her own language, probably calling off her backup and trying to save her operation. Jake ran to the cages. The locks were electronic, connected to the same power source he had used on the Kron. He ripped the main cable out of the wall and jammed it into the lock mechanism of Ben's cage. The lock sparked and died, and the door swung open. "Help me get the others," Jake said. Ben nodded, and together they forced open the other cages. There were 6 prisoners total, including Ben. All of them were scared and weak from their captivity, but they could move. "The tunnel," Jake said, pointing to the locked service door. "We need to get through it." One of the freed prisoners, a small alien with purple skin, spoke up. "I can pick locks. Give me something thin and metal." Jake handed him a piece of wire from the scattered equipment. The alien went to work while more pieces of crystal fell from the ceiling. The whole basement was coming apart. The lock clicked open just as the ceiling gave a massive crack. "Go, go, go!" Jake shouted. They ran into the tunnel. It was narrow and dark, but it led away from the house. Behind them, they could hear the sound of crystal shattering as Zira's beautiful home collapsed. The tunnel opened up into the forest about 100 yards from the house. Jake and the other prisoners emerged into the fresh air just as the crystalline structure fell in on itself, with a sound like a million wind chimes breaking at once. Jake fell to his knees, holding his injured ribs. His whole body hurt. He was covered in cuts and bruises. But he was alive. They were all alive. Ben helped him to his feet. "You crazy human," he said with a weak laugh. "You actually did it." Through the trees, they could see Zira and her Kron enforcers standing in front of the ruins of her home. She was screaming with rage, her elegant composure completely destroyed. "My ship is nearby," Jake said. "Can everyone walk?" The prisoners nodded. They were hurt and tired, but freedom gave them strength. As they made their way through the forest, Jake heard sirens in the distance. Someone must have reported the collapse. Good. The authorities would find Zira and her operation. They reached Jake's ship 20 minutes later. It was cramped with 7 people inside, but nobody complained. Jake fired up the engines and lifted off before anyone could stop them. As they broke atmosphere and headed back toward the trading station, Ben sat down next to Jake in the cockpit. "Thank you," Ben said quietly. "I thought I was going to die in that cage." "We're not safe yet," Jake said. "Zira has connections. She might come after us." "Let her try," Ben said with a grim smile. She learned today that humans are not as easy to deal with as she thought. Jake looked at his hands on the controls. They were shaking from adrenaline and pain. He had been a trader for 3 years, trying to leave his old life behind. But when it mattered, he had fallen back on his training. He had remembered how to fight, how to survive. "No," Jake said softly. "I guess we're not." As they flew toward the station, Jake sent a message to Ryan Carter. His friend was going to be very smug about being right to warn him. But Jake didn't care. He was alive. And Zira had learned an important lesson. The galaxy was full of people who underestimated each other. But underestimating a human was a particularly dangerous mistake to make. The trading station's security met Jake's ship as soon as he docked. They had received his transmission about Zira's operation and the freed prisoners. Station security was tight about illegal activities, especially when it involved slavery and fighting rings. Jake and the others were taken to the security offices for questioning. A human woman in a commander's uniform interviewed Jake personally. Her name was Lisa Hayes, and she worked for Human Diplomatic Security. "Walk me through what happened," Commander Hayes said, sitting across from Jake in the small interview room. Jake told her everything. The invitation from Zira, the dinner, the discovery of the basement arena, the escape. Hayes listened without interrupting, taking notes on her tablet. "You were lucky," Hayes said when he finished. "The Velen authorities raided what was left of Zira's property 2 hours ago. They found evidence of her trafficking operation going back 5 years. She had been selling captives to fighting rings throughout the sector." "What about Zira?" Jake asked. "In custody," Hayes said, "along with her 2 Kron enforcers and 3 other associates. The Velen government is horrified. They are claiming that Zira's actions go against everything their culture stands for." "Do you believe them?" Jake asked. Hayes shrugged. "Probably. The Velens really are peaceful as a species, but every species has its outliers. Individuals who choose a different path." She looked at Jake carefully. "Your service record says you were a Marine. Combat experience in the frontier wars." "That was a long time ago," Jake said. "Not so long that you forgot how to handle yourself," Hayes observed. "You took down 2 Kron enforcers with improvised weapons. That is impressive." Jake touched his bandaged ribs. The station's medical team had treated him for cracked ribs, cuts, and bruises. He would be sore for weeks. "I got lucky and desperate." "You were also trained," Hayes said. "Which brings me to my next point. This incident has caused something of a stir. The other freed prisoners have been telling their stories to the station authorities. They are talking about how a single human went up against multiple opponents and won. Word is spreading. Word about what? Jake asked, though he had a sinking feeling he knew where this was going. About humans, Hayes said. About what we are capable of. You see, the galaxy has a certain view of humanity. We are seen as average, not particularly strong, not particularly fast, not particularly smart, just another species among thousands. That sounds about right, Jake said. Hayes shook her head. But it is not right. It is incomplete. Yes, we are not the strongest or the fastest, but we evolved on a death world, Jake. Earth is a harsh planet by galactic standards. Heavy gravity, dangerous weather, predators, diseases. Every other intelligent species in the galaxy evolved on easier worlds or was uplifted by genetic engineering. I don't understand what you're getting at, Jake said. Humans are survivors, Hayes explained. We have endurance, adaptability, pain tolerance, and tactical thinking that other species lack. We are not spectacular in any one area, but we are very good at not giving up. That makes us dangerous in ways the galaxy is only starting to understand. Jake thought about Zira's questions at dinner, her interest in human conflicts and survival abilities. Zira knew this. That is why she wanted to capture me. Exactly, Hayes said. The black market knows what humans are worth. Now, after this incident, legitimate organizations are starting to notice too. You have already received job offers. What? Jake said, surprised. Hayes turned her tablet around to show him. There were dozens of messages. Private security firms, exploration companies, even military contractors. All of them wanted to hire Jake Morrison, the human who had escaped from a trafficking ring and destroyed a Velen criminal operation. I don't want any of this, Jake said, pushing the tablet away. I just want to go back to running cargo. That may not be possible, Hayes said gently. You are famous now, whether you want to be or not. The other freed prisoners are calling you a hero. Ben Parker has told his story to 3 different news services. Jake put his head in his hands. I just wanted to have dinner with someone who seemed nice. I know, Hayes said. But you stumbled into something bigger. The galaxy is changing, Jake. Humans are moving out into space in larger numbers. We are making contact with more species, getting involved in more situations. People are learning what we are capable of. Both the good and the bad. What do you want from me? Jake asked. Nothing right now, Hayes said. But I want you to understand something. You are going to be approached by many people in the coming weeks. Some will offer you money, some will offer you adventure, some will offer you a chance to do good. Be careful who you trust. Not everyone who is interested in humans has good intentions. Jake thought about Zira's elegant smile and kind words. I learned that lesson already. Good, Hayes said, standing up. You are free to go. Your ship has been cleared. The other freed prisoners are being taken care of. They will be returned to their homes or given asylum if they need it. Jake stood as well, wincing at the pain in his ribs. What about Ben, the other human? He wants to thank you, Hayes said. He is waiting outside. Ben Parker was indeed waiting in the corridor. His black eye had been treated and he was wearing clean clothes provided by the station. When he saw Jake, his face broke into a huge smile. Jake Morrison, Ben said, shaking his hand firmly. I owe you my life. You would have done the same, Jake said. Maybe, Ben said, but you are the one who actually did it. You know what is funny? I thought Zira was harmless when she invited me for drinks. Peaceful Velen, interested in human culture. I walked right into her trap. Same here, Jake admitted. I guess we both learned to be more careful. Or maybe the galaxy learned to be more careful of us, Ben said with a grin. I talked to some of the other freed prisoners. They said they had never seen anything like what you did. Using the environment, improvising weapons, refusing to give up even when you were hurt. They said it was like watching a different species entirely. I just did what I had to do, Jake said. That is exactly what makes humans dangerous, Ben said. We do what we have to do, every time, no matter what. They talked for a while longer, exchanging contact information and promising to stay in touch. Then Ben left to catch a transport back to his home planet. Jake returned to his ship. Ryan Carter was waiting for him at the docking bay. I told you to be careful, Ryan said, but there was no smugness in his voice, just relief. When I heard what happened, I thought you were dead. Almost was, Jake admitted. You were right. I should have listened to you. Yeah, you should have, Ryan agreed. But I am glad you made it out. And I am proud of you for saving those people. They went to the station bar, and Jake told Ryan the whole story over drinks. By the time he finished, several other people had gathered around to listen. Word really was spreading fast. Over the next few days, Jake's message inbox filled with offers and requests, security jobs, exploration contracts, interview requests from journalists. He deleted most of them without reading them. A few seemed legitimate, but Jake was not ready to make any decisions yet. He did accept one invitation, though. Ben Parker invited him to visit his family on their home colony. They wanted to meet the man who had saved their son. Jake figured he could spare a few days for that. On his last night at the station before leaving, Jake stood at the large window in the main corridor, looking out at the stars. Commander Hayes found him there. Have you thought about what you are going to do? She asked. Keep flying, Jake said. Keep running cargo. Try to stay out of trouble. The galaxy is starting to notice humanity, Hayes said. That brings opportunities and dangers. We need people like you, Jake. People who understand both sides of what humans are capable of. I am not a hero, Jake said. I just wanted to survive. That is what makes you perfect, Hayes said. You are not looking for glory or power. You just want to live your life. But when pushed, you fight back. That is the human story in miniature. Jake looked at his reflection in the window. He saw a tired trader with bruises and bandages. Not a hero, not a warrior, just a man who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time and had to do what was necessary. Zira made a mistake, Jake said quietly. She thought I was harmless because humans seem average. She underestimated me. The whole galaxy has been underestimating us, Hayes said. But they are learning. Every human out here in space is teaching them lessons about what we really are. Sometimes those are good lessons about our compassion and creativity. Sometimes they are hard lessons about our resilience and refusal to quit. What do you think the galaxy will do when they fully understand what humans are? Jake asked. Hayes smiled. Some will fear us, some will respect us, some will try to use us, but all of them will remember this. Humans are the species that came from a death world and decided to explore the stars anyway. We are survivors, and survivors are never truly harmless, no matter how average they appear. Jake thought about that as he returned to his ship later. He plotted a course away from the station, away from the attention and the offers. He just wanted to fly for a while and think about everything that had happened. As his ship jumped into faster-than-light travel, Jake made a decision. He would keep being a trader. He would keep living a quiet life. But he would also remember what he was capable of when necessary. And he would never again assume that anyone was truly harmless just because they seemed kind. The galaxy was full of predators and prey, heroes and villains. Humans were learning to navigate this new reality. And the galaxy was learning about humans in return. It was going to be an interesting education for everyone involved.